Okay, I had somebody checking out my blog, so I'm just gonna review this blog post I did on Andrija Puharich and how he discovered this secret of the precognitive negative resonance that Sir Roger Penrose says is the key of quantum biology for proto-consciousness. So it's a anti-gravitational weak force that's also non-commutative. So it was originally discovered by Louis de Broglie, and Andrija Puharich was relying on Louis de Broglie, but also on this Schuster equation that was a gravitomagnetic field. And so the basic postulate of Puharich is that the 1/2 spin of the electron is non-local in relation to the orbital angular momentum, which is another way of saying that in order to measure the angular momentum of the electron, you have to have a 720 degree spin. So it's inherently in the 5th dimension of time and frequency. And so he got this idea from Schuster as a gravitomagnetic effect. So in terms of quantum biology, he's relying on the 1/2 spin or magnetic moment of a proton in the oxygen or potassium in relation to the 1/2 spin of the electron. So the proton or the oxygen is in the nerve membrane, and this is through the neurotransmitters like acetylcholine. So his claim is that if you slow down the nerve impulse to around 8 cycles per second, which is also the REM theta brainwave and the Schumann resonance of Earth, then you get an inverse to the frequency as an increase of time. And so the time increase is actually based on this biophoton signal. So he's talking about how this interacts with water. So he's using ultrasound as the external energy of splitting water. But that's also used to activate the vagus nerve connected to the ear that then increases the acetylcholine as a nerve transmission. So you have acetylcholine acts to cause a deep relaxation by slowing down the nerve impulse. So the rhythm of the nerve impulse increases as frequency, and therefore the inverse time increases. And so what Louis de Broglie was saying is that you have a particle that has a momentum as mass. So it has the mass as inverse to the wavelength, but the particle is directly proportional to the frequency that's inverse to the time. So the momentum is to the wavelength as the frequency is to the time. So what happens is that you have an increase in the biophoton signal as blue light that then causes a decrease in the matter as momentum of the nerve pulse as a deeper relaxation down to 8 cycles per second. And so you have this relation between the biophoton signal and the splitting of water through ultrasound, and then the nerve pulse going down. And so you end up getting an increase in time due to the decrease in frequency, and that increase in time ends up being a precognitive signal in relation to the biophoton signal. So you end up getting a virtual photon because of this difference between the wavelength and the frequency of the biophoton signal going up as momentum or as frequency, and then the momentum of the nerve impulse going down as a relaxation in frequency that then increases the time period, causing a negative time frequency that's a precognitive signal that's also anti-gravitational. So the claim of the gravitomagnetic effect is that the gravitational potential is precisely due to this relation between the electron and with the biophoton inherent to the change of the energy level of the electron with the proton in the neurotransmitter of the nerve signal. And so he's using different types of chemicals to cause this effect. I know he used laughing gas, and so he's saying that because of this inherent non-locality, you're actually getting a change in the gravitational constant in a very small region of space in the inter-ionic dimension of the nerve plasma. And so this originally was from Blackett, the gravitational, the connection between gravity and electromagnetic is based on the relation of the angular orbital momentum and the spin or magnetic moment. And this has been verified in the weak measurements using entangled photons, where they get an anti-gravitational, what they're calling a negaparticle. And so this gets more into what the gravitational magnetism or Blackett effect was originally studied in cosmology and then reproduced in the lab, and then that became known as the Schuster-Blackett law. And so when you realize that the elementary spin magnetic moment is actually the same as like an orbital angular momentum, but it's in the fifth dimension, and that by fifth dimension it's actually time and frequency. And so that's the only real way to understand the relationship between the orbital angular momentum and the spin magnetic moment. And so these spins can accumulate via this rotation, and that's how you build up this energy. And that's done through meditation and with the aid of various psychotropic substances. And that's pretty much it. That's the secret that causes this time reversed precognitive signal that's actually a negative resonance or a subharmonic as an increase in amplitude from the negative frequency. So the point of Basil J. Hiley is that you cannot visualize this as waves. So the original Louis de Broglie model was trying to assume it still existed in Euclidean space-time, but actually this has to be purely quantum algebra, because there's no way you can synchronize all those phases in terms of a wave mechanics that was used for the Schrodinger wave equation. So what Heisenberg originally discovered was what he called transition frequencies, because you have this inherent motion to reality as a transition frequency, and that's what makes it non-local. But when you practice meditation, you're able to then access this in real time, because there's no external medium that you're relying on. So there's a difference between what you experience internally through meditation and then what others perceive externally, or what you perceive. So that happens with your own body too. So the internal is through the biophoton frequency going up, so you see the blue light. Then the external is your relaxation of the nerve energy of matter, and then that creates that lowering of frequency and then an increase of time that then becomes precognitive, because it becomes non-local. So that effect of a time reversed deep relaxation then becomes non-local externally, while internally you're having a increase of frequency as perception that's also precognitive due to the time reversed of the frequency of the virtual photons. And so that's why they call it like a holographic reality, because you're constantly experiencing internal reality before you experience external reality, and then that external reality is then mirrored internally in your body.